Hello, how are you doing? Thanks for joining me again. It's a glorious sunny winter's day in Stockport, so I've just left the unit where I've picked up some kit that I've not used for quite a while. Now, all the time I've been shooting these videos, I've tended to use somewhere between a 20mm and a 50mm lens. I've been doing street photography close up, but back in the day, when I was a professional events and PR photographer and did a bit of music as well, this was my usual weapon of choice. This is 70-200. It's a Sigma telephoto lens, f2.8, and this was really useful for picking out individuals, bits of action from a distance. I'm going to use this today. I'm going to put it on the 620 and shoot film. I've got the last roll of Ultramax in here, and I think Ultramax is going to be good today. I really prefer Colour Plus, as you know, but a 400 will enable me to get a really nice high shutter speed, which is what you need when you're using this combination. So I'm going to go out and shoot street photography with this long lens, mainly at 200, and talk you through some tips and some things to be aware of and to be considerate about. So without further ado, let me find a good place, we'll load up and we'll get shooting. Okay, so I'm ready to load up now. My 70-200, it's been dropped, it's been abused so much. The autofocus is pretty much shot. So I'm going to be shooting it manual. But as you know, I like to keep everything as pure as possible. Manual focus is going to be a challenge with a lens of this length. It's going to be really easy to get out of focus shots, but we will do our best. Right, let's load up. First of all, I need to attach this to the body. I used to be able to do this without even thinking about it, but it's been a while now. Not quite so much muscle memory. Got our 400 speed film, bob it in, switch the camera on so it will auto load. There's a bit of sunlight coming through, so not ideal conditions. There we go. There we are. Now, this is a full frame camera, obviously 35mm camera, and a 70-200mm lens. Now, the rule of thumb is, when you're using that with no image stabilizers, no cropped sensors, anything like that, you need a shutter speed that is faster than the millimeter of your lens to ensure that you get sharpness. If you've got shakier hands, you need to go even higher than that. So I would always have this set at 200 or above. I should add, by the way, I very rarely go out with this bag. I usually have a backpack, but when I'm shooting with this, this is the best option that I've found. And in fact, what I'll probably do is I will remove the lens hood so it will just slot in there like that. And then if I do need it, if I'm shooting into the sun, I can do that. Right, let's go. So this is actually the first shot on the roll, and I just grabbed it just after I'd loaded up. I really like it. It looks like there's a demon driving a Volkswagen, but actually, as you can probably guess, it's one of those seat covers to deter somebody who might come and steal your van. It works because of the way everything's compressed and you can't see too much of the environment around it. One of the really nice things about a long lens is it compresses perspective. There's a smiley face that's been drawn onto this bus shelter, and if I took a picture with a normal lens, it would all be a bit lost. But if I shoot it from across the street, it will actually be a better picture. So yeah, I hope you can see the compressed perspective on this picture. If I'd shot from the same position with a wide angle lens, the bus shelter would have been too tiny to see the detail on it. If I got up close, the bus shelter would have been higher up than the railings. It just wouldn't have looked right. So long lens was the way to go for that. Okay, so here we've got a perfect example of needing to get close to something and not actually being able to physically do it because we are up in the air. We cannot look down on things from close up because, well, you understand about flight and wings and all that sort of stuff. So I'm photographing from here and I'm going to wait for the thing to happen down there and photograph it. And it's great because with that height, you can isolate things using the ground. Whereas if you're at ground level, you have the distractions of the things that are in the background, the shops, the sky, etc. So it should make a nice silhouette shot, and it might take a while for something to happen. And that's why one of the things I do when I'm shooting long lens street is I tend to have my headphones in. I don't usually put in headphones when I'm doing street photography because I need to be aware of my surroundings, and I also want to be thinking about the sounds of the city and being alert to what's going on. But when I'm shooting far away, I'm not hearing the sounds from down there, and I need something to pass the time, get me into the actual mood for taking the photo. So I've got some good tunes on here. If you want to know what they are, just ask me in the comments and I might tell you. But yeah, I've got some good tunes on here which will keep me in the mood, keep me relaxed, waiting for the moment when I take the perfect shot. And I will just try and take one shot because I'm using film and I need to be a little bit careful about how much I shoot, which is one other thing that I just wanted to talk about from when I was a photographer, an event photographer in the old days. It was so hard compared to nowadays, mainly because of the lack of mirrorless cameras. When I was shooting a conference or something, the sound of my shutter going off would be a distraction. You've all seen it on the news, like and so I was very, very careful. I used to take a few shots to not distract people from what they were doing and spoil the conference. It goes into what I was saying in that other video about not making it about you and about taking the photos. It's about the event. So I would only get a chance to take maybe 1-2 shots. So you had to be really accurate. You had to be really in the zone. Whereas now you can silently just fire off hundreds of shots without disturbing anybody. And it kind of takes the skill away. And I kind of think it makes it possible for people who aren't as good as natural photographers, who haven't got the eye, who can't see the things about to happen, just able to do that shotgun, that scattergun thing of just like keeping on holding the shutter down until you get the perfect shot. Where's the skill in that? Right, okay, anyway, let's get this shot before we lose the light. You'll notice I'm using the ironwork as a support for the camera so I don't have to hold it as steady, because it's really hard to hold it steady at this thing, but I am also very careful it can't slide through, so I'm not going to drop it on anybody's head. What was it I said about natural photographers having an eye, knowing what was going to happen? Yeah, I've embarrassed myself here, haven't I, a bit? Not the greatest pictures I've ever taken, but it was trying to quickly get something to prove a point. Let's just move on. So one of the things you can use the long lens for, and I've shown this before, but I'm going to do it again because I like this shot, is using it to blur out the background so you can make something in the foreground the real focus literally of interest where it would just not really show up otherwise. So there are all these little stickers that have come off the end of disposable vapes, and it's really a thing of the age and it's really nice to show. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a picture quite close up. I'm going to swap to aperture priority because I want to have a really shallow depth of field, so I'm going to go for 3.54, so it's not completely wide open but almost, and then the background shouldn't show any people, it should all just be blurry. And you can just make out the text that says "stub it out" that's engraved on the top of this bin. So it's kind of interesting to see how things have changed. You no longer stub things out, but instead you stick the end of the stickers on here. So here we are at another location, and this is a good time to talk about the ethics thing I was talking about. A lot of people have a problem with people using long lenses, and I can quite see why, because they can be used to probe and poke into places that they shouldn't. But just because you've got the tools doesn't mean you have to use them badly. Now, as you know, I'm very much against getting into people's faces, and I think even if you've got good intentions and you get into somebody's face with a camera, that's kind of not nice, is it? They can make somebody feel worried. However, shooting from a distance at the square down there to get some interesting shapes and silhouettes, nobody's going to feel intimidated and worried about that because they're probably not aware that you are there. And if they are aware that you're there, they can't really see what you're doing. But that means that you have to be extra careful not to do anything wrong. You've got to always use this and think, actually, should I be taking a picture of that? Do I want to take a picture of that? What's the purpose of me taking that picture? And I'm sure that almost every time you'll think it's fine and you'll take the picture. Right, on with the headphones. Let's wait for some interesting juxtaposition of things to take place so that I can get another fantastic shot. So yeah, I took a few shots from the vantage point up on the steps by the plaza, and there isn't a particular narrative here. I would like there to be a narrative in my pictures, but I kind of like it as a picture. This, however, I really do like, and it's being able to pick out something without the extraneous information. The interest in this picture is the red and the green. You don't want any jumble around it to distract you from that, unless you're going to be incredibly fortuitous and clever and to be able to make that jumble into some sort of form that leads the eye into the picture. If that's not possible, and it wouldn't have been possible in this instance, what you want to do is just isolate the figures, and I was able to do that with the long lens and the high vantage point. So a couple more things that we haven't talked about, which aren't exclusive to long lenses, but they do help, is layering and subframing. So subframing, I can use this triangle here to subframe the mural behind, and I get the little bit of tagging as well. So it makes it more interesting. Or if I was going to shoot down the street, I could use, say, a litter bin and use the aperture of the litter bin as a way to subframe what was behind it. Layering, I can take pictures which show different layers through, and because I'm compressing perspective on this, it makes it easier. So let's do a couple of examples of that now. I've actually decided to go for this bit here because I think that will make a good frame. So you get two examples of framing, and I think the first one, yeah, it's nice, it's okay, but the second one works really well. If it was with a wide angle lens, the bin would probably be sharp as well as the person in the background, and also the relative sizes would be wrong. With this, you've got a nice creamy outline that leads the eye into the frame. Again, it's a bit of an easy trick to pull, but sometimes it's also a good way to be able to look like you're taking a picture of one thing and actually be taking a picture of something else, which can be a useful tool to have in your arsenal when you're out working the streets as a street photographer. Sometimes a long lens comes in handy when just something unexpected happens, like a helicopter suddenly starts hovering over you. So yeah, it was just lucky that I had a long lens on a day that a helicopter decided to come and hover over Stockport. It's not something I see very often, and I don't know why it was there, but I took a couple of pictures. I probably got a bit carried away because it was something different, and I wasted 2 or 3 shots, which I probably only needed the one. But this one I think is the best, and it's nice because I've managed to capture the helicopter between the 2 prongs of a street light, and that was deliberate. I tried to get round and get it into that position, and I had to make sure that I had enough depth of field, so I again had to pick a shutter speed and an aperture that worked quickly to get enough detail in both those 2 subjects for it to work, because if the street lamp had been blurry it wouldn't have worked as well, and if the chopper had been blurry it wouldn't have worked at all. So while I just catch my breath for a moment, is it a good idea to carry around a 70 to 200mm for street photography? It's big, it's cumbersome, it really weighs your arm down, it's not discreet, they're usually pretty expensive. So I would say probably not. You're best off, if you want to shoot that sort of long length, using a 4/3 camera or an APS-C camera with a prime lens, which will be smaller, lighter, more discreet. It's still going to be chunkier than using a wide angle or a prime 50mm lens, because they are just designed to be small. They just can be small. These have lots of elements and lots of weight to them. But there are things that you can do with this, as I hopefully have shown you as I've gone along, that you just can't do with a wide angle lens, and it is a really nice thing to have in your arsenal, maybe to just have in a backpack and only use it when you need to, although you have got to take into account the weight then. If you are going to use it as your main lens, it's really useful to have a bag like this where you can just slip it in, flip it open, get it out, put it back in again. You don't want to have it on a strap around your neck, you don't want to be carrying it around just like this. So yeah, also if you're going to be doing a lot of static stuff, you probably want a little monopod or a tripod with you, and probably not a tripod, but sling a monopod around your backpack as well. You've got to factor all that in. But it is an interesting tool. I'm really glad I've got out with it today. I've got some nice shots, hopefully I'll get a couple more before I finish, and yeah, like I say, a good one to have in the arsenal, probably not an everyday walk around lens. Right, let's crack on. I want to get the pitch in with the interchange sign there, It's probably going to be a bit blurry because there's such a depth of field and the light is getting worse now, so I've got to use a slower shutter speed to get a decent depth of field. The background was more blurry than I would have liked it to have been, but I was down to 1/60th of a second, and I'm amazed that I managed to hold the camera this steady. So one of the things that we use a long lens for is the same as with all wildlife photography. It's to not disturb the subjects that we're photographing. And again, I talked about the ethics about that before, but I think it's really important in photography to not be part of the scene. You don't want people reacting to you. You want to photograph what's happened. There can be a really good project in people reacting to you, and there have been examples of that, which I'm sure you'll be able to find, where people make it very obvious that they're there and film the reaction. Again, that gets into the I don't like being in people's faces thing. But what I try and do, I create art, but I also do documentary, and documentary is probably the core of what I do. And I think the most important thing in documentary photography is not altering what you are photographing or recording. So by keeping a distance, I can take shots of life going on without my involvement in it, without me changing what's going on. So I shall just wait, take a picture, and I will show it. I quite like this picture of the guy running under the underpass, and I'm quite pleased that I've actually got him right underneath what looks like a lightning bolt, which I think is just staining underneath the bridge. One of the things that long lenses do is give a sense of distance and isolation. One of the things about wide-angle lenses, it puts you in the centre of the action and you feel very connected. One of the things that long lenses do is create a sense of distance, melancholy. And that's why in the past I have used long lenses quite a lot. I don't tend to use them so much nowadays, but particularly in my earlier work, and I'll just show a couple of examples here, I used long lenses to create a sense of loneliness, isolation, disjointedness, being apart from the rest of the world. And I think that's a really important use of a long lens. One of the things you can do with a long lens is to just use a very small part of what's available so you can isolate things. What I really like is getting a silhouette on a completely plain piece of wall. So this is the shot against the white wall. It's not a particularly interesting picture because I couldn't spare the time to just wait for the perfect person to walk across. But I spotted the shadows, the sun just came out briefly, and I really liked the way the stop sign and the red brick and the shadows formed this really nice geometric. I'm a real sucker for geometrics, as you know, and I took a couple of shots. It's also interesting that somebody has graffitied a little person, I think it is, in the middle of the stop sign to look like they are looking out of a window or something. So that just adds a certain something because it's different from all the other stop signs that you tend to see. So there we go, a roll of Ultramax on the 70 to 200mm lens. I hope you found it interesting. I hope there are a few tips there or things that you've forgotten about that it's reminded you about. I'll be back very soon with some more content. Please do like and subscribe if you would, it really helps me out. Until we meet again, take care of yourselves, enjoy what you're shooting. Bye for now.